Okay guys, looking at two different options for us. This is just, again, trying to satisfy kind of my desires and tie it in with what you guys are wanting to do as well. We're going to get to spend time together, and that's the key. And no matter what, I think we'll have some A fun and some B fun as well. But what we're looking at is the difference between the two. It's driving time and then the amount of effort, I think, that goes into it. So two different scenarios because of the change in our plans, because of the train not taking new reservations from Durango to the Needleton drop-off point. We still can do that. If you take a look, what we're talking about doing here is about 14.5-hour drive from Lawrence to Durango. So if we decide we're going to do that, that's a pretty full day of driving. Certainly not anything that we haven't done before. So I'm not worried about that side of it getting out there. We would leave Saturday morning, the 28th, just like we've talked about. And if we do that, what I would, because of the difference in the plans from being dropped off at the Needleton, which would save us about 10 miles each way, I've mapped out what we could do and still do the Chicago Basin and hit the peaks, all within that 4 days out, and the drive out there and the drive back, 6 days total. But if we decided to do that, what we're looking at here is 4 days. So Saturday we'd drive out there, we'd find a spot near Purgatory. That is the area that we would, Purgatory is right across from the trailhead to, that is about 10 miles away from the drop-off point of the Durango train. Okay, so straight up from Durango, there's an area called Purgatory, and Purgatory Flats leads into the Animas River Trail, and the Animas River Trail goes over and connects with that Needleton Trail. So in this case, what we'd be looking at, I'm just trying to pull some of this up and make sure that you guys understand what I'm talking about here. But this is day one. This would be Sunday morning. So what we would do is Trailhead would be right here. It's the Purgatory Trailhead, and it's a drop when you first start off. It's a drop of quite a bit, and then you start to climb. But it's not, the grade is not that horrible, but it is pretty significant in coming back. Okay, so that you're dropping when you first take off. You go down into a valley, and then the rest of the time you're kind of hiking next to the Animas River. So you're always feeling you're in some dense forest, but we would be on that trail for about 10 miles. Okay, so if you can kind of see, you can follow the dot along here, but Purgatory Flats come down here, and so we're starting off at about just under 9,000 feet, and then as we go along here, and if you're taking a look at it, you're following the blue dot up on the map, right about here is where that Needleton. So you're almost, if you take a look at it, you're about 10 miles in, and that's where the Needleton would be the Durango train would be dropping off the people that were lucky enough to have reservations. Okay, so that's 10 miles in. We then have another 5 or 6, 7 miles to get to the Chicago Basin area. Okay, so that first day we would be hiking about 16 miles, and and again, carrying full packs. It'd be the first day that we would be out, and so that would be a challenge. All right, we can do that if you look at it, we would be early afternoon, or I mean late afternoon, early evening by the time we hit the Chicago Basin. Again, pretty strenuous. I don't know if you guys are up for that. We could also get a little ways out there and then stop and stop at the Needleton at 10 miles in, and then do the 6 miles the next day. But in the scenario that I have, we hike that first day, we go 16 miles in. Day 2, the way it looks to me is that we would want to tackle at least 2 peaks, and since the 2 peaks, the Wyndham and the Sunlight, are the most technical, I would suggest we look at tackling that first. And so this is mapped out. This shows that on day 2, it's just 2.5, 3 miles round trip, and I'm kind of suspect of that, but I will check. But in any case, that would be a day that we would go up and get Wyndham Peak, and then go over to Sunlight and pick that up, and then go back down to wherever we had set up base camp in the Chicago Basin. So that may be a day that takes a while just because of the technical side of it. We may get there and see that it's not as technical, it's not as daunting as what I'm thinking, but it may be more than 2.5, 3 miles. Okay, I'm going to check into that. But if it's just 2.5 miles and we're feeling good, we don't have altitude sickness. Now remember, Saturday we're driving in, and we would camp at about 9,000 feet. The second day we would hike into the Chicago Basin, which would put us right at about 11,000 feet. So we're kind of getting acclimated fairly quickly. So if we decided on day 2 of the trip, which would be Monday, that we wanted to, if we were up for it and we were feeling good and we hit all 4 peaks, fine. Okay, that would just give us some additional time to get back. Okay, so that's day 2. Again, do the Wyndham and the Sunlight Peak, and then head back to our base camp. All right. Okay, if we did not pick up those other 2 peaks, if we just did Wyndham and Sunlight on day 2 of the backcountry portion of our hike, which would be Monday, if we just had done the 2 peaks and not the other 2, Mount Ellis and North Ellis, then we could do that on day 3. Now, it's a little bit longer. That route, it looks like there's a little bit, it's further to the northwest from the Chicago Basin base camp, so it's a little bit longer. But what I was understanding some of the trip reports to say is that wouldn't be as taxing. So if on day 3 we decided that we were going to pick up those 2, I would say we would get up early enough that we could then come back down. And this is all, this is based on some of the reports that I've seen, the trip reports. Some people have done more than this, but at least have done this, where they go up from the Chicago Basin base camp, grab those 2 peaks, come back down, rest for just a period of time, break camp, and then start heading back down the Chicago Basin trail to at least the Needleton drop-off point or further. Again, it just matters what kind of weather, what kind of conditions, what kind of condition we're in. But we could, on that day, do 10 miles. Now, some of that would be at the peaks. Some of it would be on the trails. So again, it's pretty significant, but if we're talking about, that would be day 3, if we could get down to the Needleton area, the drop-off point, that would mean that we'd only have on Wednesday, day 4, we would have the 10 miles back to the trailhead, and therefore we could get the 10 miles And if you remember when I said that that trailhead starts off by dropping in elevation, so that last mile or two of getting back to the trailhead, back to the parking, is going to be some steep elevation gain, and we're going to be tired by that time. But again, so if we, on day one, we hike out to the Chicago Basin, long day, 16, 17 miles of full pack. Day two, we pick up 2 peaks, the more technical peaks, get done with that fairly early, get some rest, or pick up the other 2. But let's just say on day 2, we pick up those 2. Day 3, we could pick up Ellis and North Ellis, and then hike about halfway or about a quarter of the way back to the trailhead. Day 4, Wednesday, we make it all the way back to the trailhead, pack up, and start hitting the road towards Denver. Again, based on time, we'd find a place to car camp, and then that would make the trip to Denver the next morning that much shorter. That's the Chicago Basin trip.